Hi, I'm Debbie Morais. This is Legal Matters, the program that's been designed to address the critical, sometimes contentious issues that are facing businesses and consumers today. It's legal information, practical solutions, and straight talk about a wide variety of topics that will affect your home and work life. We want to always begin by thanking the sponsors, which is the Bizarre Grassa Law Firm in East Providence. Today we have David Bizarre with us. Welcome.
Thank you, Debbie.
So, good topic for today, the 21st century crime, seniors and financial scams that are targeting seniors and also older adults. It's so prevalent that we thought we better tackle some of those issues and some of the latest, most popular, and some of the most insidious scams, the ones that they say are trending today. There certainly are enough of them. In the past, we've discussed things such as the elder abuse among the 90% of adults who were scammed by families. We're not really going to focus on that today, but certainly there's an awful lot of topics from Social Security ripoffs, credit card fraud, discount prescriptions, timeshare, grandparents, fake lotteries, so many. Where do we begin? Let's talk about the Social Security. Most elders rely on Social Security. If they get ripped off, many of them are in such a vulnerable place they don't have time to recoup their losses, and it's a terrible thing. How does this kind of thing happen, and what do you think seniors could do about it? Somebody's going to rip them off and they don't get their check.
So, give me your scenario.
Okay, so most of them, they'll tell you that you should have direct deposit, but instead, somebody scams them by saying, we need just a little bit, we call them, we just need a little bit more information. Could you give us your account number, your PIN number, because we want to make sure that it goes to the correct place. Well, it's definitely not going to the correct place. It's going to that person's routed number, their bank number. What do we do about that?
So I would suggest, starting with Social Security, that you deal directly with Social Security, maybe face-to-face at one of the local Social Security offices to set up, if it's retirement or disability or whatever it is that you're being paid, how you want that set up, and give them the information directly so that you know you're at the Social Security office and the information's going directly to them. So then when somebody calls to follow up, you can almost 100% be assured that it's not someone from Social Security, because they're not going to call you to ask you to change your information. And if they do, say, sure, I won't give you any information over the phone. I'll make an appointment and come in to see you at your office.
And I guess they also say, too, you could say, thank you very much. Could I just have your name and telephone number? I'll get right back to you. And, of course, if they're scam artists, con artists,
Yep.
They're likely not to do that.
Although it's interesting, because some of these elaborate schemes are so elaborate that they have set up call numbers that seem to mimic or fish, I guess, with the PH, the information that is the actual Social Security office or whatever. So when they call in with some 800 number or something, it sort of lights up your caller ID as Social Security. Don't believe it. Don't give out any information. And as you say, get their numbers and say, I'll call you back. But I wouldn't call them back. I'd look up online the actual Social Security number or the local office, or go to the local office.
And apparently, just to your point, too, about that telephone number, apparently many are sophisticated enough to find a local number that makes it look like it really is something that's your local bank that wants that number, which of course is not the case. But apparently some people have become very sophisticated knowing that it works. And apparently they do it because older people are very attractive. Here they have maybe a little money, a nest egg, and they assume that older people can't prosecute them, won't prosecute them, their memories won't serve them well as reliable witnesses, and they're at low risk, the thieves are at low risk for doing such terrible things.
And maybe they think they're a little more trusting of people, so that they'll say, oh sure, I see on my caller ID this says the IRS or Social Security, so they're more willing to give information rather than thinking about, these people don't call other people from their offices. You have to call them, and when you call them, you're usually on hold for a long time, so I don't think they're going to bother calling you.
Good point, David, good point. And apparently not just seniors, but a lot of adults like lotteries. Chance to win. That sounds good. It's very popular. And apparently there are a couple of popular trends right now. The pay-to-play scheme. You've won, but you just have to send a small check, your credit card number or something, just to, what, make sure that it's valid. We'll send this to you as long as you give us your bank number, all of these things. People, it's hard to believe that people would actually believe that they won and they just have to pay something in order to get that prize or whatever that is.
That's been going on actually for a little while now, and so they call you or they email you or get in touch with you somehow and say, all right, you've won the Canadian lottery or whatever it might be.
The Jamaican one is the latest.
No, yes, Jamaica. So it's a very big lottery prize, but in order for us to set it up, we need you to send us some money so we can get that rolling, and your account information so we can deposit it into your account, and you can be guaranteed that you didn't win. First of all, you didn't play. And I know the Rhode Island Lottery says you have to play to win, right?
Yes.
So if you don't play, you don't win. And you didn't win, and you're going to lose if you play their game with them.
Is there something that's inherently illegal, too, about you winning or playing a lottery in a foreign country? Is that somehow illegal for that to have taken place? Suppose I wanted to play the Haitian lottery or the Jamaican lottery.
Well,
could that actually happen?
I'm not 100% familiar with lotteries, but I could be right or wrong about this, but I think there's a big lottery in Canada and maybe England or whatever. I don't know that it's illegal for a U.S. citizen to participate in one of those lotteries. It may be, but I certainly can guarantee you that if you do and you do win, the IRS is entitled to its share of your winnings.
We can count on that.
You can count on that. I'm 100% sure. Whether or not it's legal or illegal, I'm not sure, because I don't know what the rules are for offshore betting, offshore gambling, and this would be similar to that, although if it's legal in Canada or legal in England, I don't think that it's probably illegal for a U.S. citizen to participate. If
you're the adult child of a senior and you start seeing that they have an inordinate amount of mail or unopened letters or stacks of material that say you've won a lottery or whatever, I think that's probably a good tip-off, too, that you should be getting a little closer and paying attention to what your parent is doing or not doing with that mail. You should absolutely be helping a parent, especially if the parent needs a little assistance in its doing the financial aspect of a person's life. There are a couple of things you need to watch for. If you see mail regarding that and you think that they're going to respond to that, have a conversation with your mother or father and ask them what this is and where it came from and what they know about it, and protect them. Just like you would if you're an adult with a young child. You need to protect an older parent who doesn't maybe necessarily have all of the worldliness that they had at one time to protect themselves. You can also watch for their accounts, and a lot of times as we're doing planning, now we've talked about the opposite side of this coin where the unscrupulous child is burying themselves not only in their parents' affairs but in their accounts and taking things that don't belong to them, but the good child, the good, wise daughter or son who can protect their parents should, by being on their accounts and watching their accounts for them and making sure there aren't any unexplained deductions or withdrawals that don't belong there. Especially if they're excessive, if they're that much of a tip-off. Right. Certainly many seniors, many adults take prescriptions, and they are costly, and depending on what your medical coverage is, even if it's good coverage, there's a lure of the discount prescription, and with that discount prescription go discount prescription scams. So someone might call the senior, you might see something on their email, online, prescription drugs, 50% off. I suppose they could be legitimate. More often they're not. And not only they are not legitimate, but they actually could be detrimental because who knows what the concoction was. What do you think someone should do? Well, there's a couple of things. Obviously, if it sounds like it's too good to be true, it probably is. I would be very concerned about buying drugs through other outlets because, as you say, who knows what ingredients are actually in that so-called prescription. It could be legitimate. You know, I understand a lot of people buy prescriptions through Canada or something like that because they're less expensive. Yeah. But I would be very cautious about that. And again, I'm sort of a face-to-face guy. I know a lot of people like to use the internet for a lot of things, and that's probably okay for
I won't go 99, but 90% of the time. But if I'm going to get a prescription from a doctor, I'm going to take that prescription to my local pharmacy and have it filled there.
Good thing, too. Good to know. Imagine this. There are a lot of anti-aging products that are sold online or through your email or phone calls. 60s, the 70s, the new 40. You should buy now and save. It'll make you 40 years younger. Most of those things, as you say, probably too good. If they sound too good to be true, they aren't true. What does someone do about that? Because those promises, once you've paid for it, aren't you really stuck with the product?
Yeah, so, yeah, I would say, again, it sounds too good to be true. It probably is. Although you probably know I'm an expert on hair products. If you Google YouTube and look at our history of our shows, you'll see the different generations of hair that I've had. And I can tell you the product that I've used is nothing. Reduce stress, maybe. And the hair may fall out, it may grow back. But there's no miracle product that I know of that makes your hair grow. There's no miracle product that makes you younger. I don't think the fountain of youth actually exists, but that's just between me and you. So if you want to buy something online and try it, and if it helps you, don't spend a lot of money on it because it's probably not really doing anything.
And how about, even though you know that doctors do such things as Botox injections, apparently one of the latest trending scams is fake Botox, as if that isn't, the issue isn't crazy as it is. Now you might actually be finding that that discounted Botox injection that you can get by going to someone else's office, it's not only not good for you to do, but now it's even fake and more troublesome. So,
as I understand it, Botox is a an ingredient made out of a toxin.
A botulism of sorts.
Right. Yes. And so if that's not already crazy enough to inject into you, fake Botox, probably chemically produced somewhere, is probably even worse. So if someone is claiming that this is really going to help you, that's really a medical issue. You could easily check with Better Business Bureau. Perhaps you could check with your with doctors or those who are considered to be certified and licensed to do these kinds of things, and you might not find that the person who's approaching you with that 50% discount has either a license or even a bona fide office to work with. You're taking a big risk if you do any of those things to your body without actually speaking to your own doctor and getting a referral to somebody who is an expert in that area and dealing with just an expert. And yet another type of scam. Imagine how devastated people can be when they're attending a loved one's funeral. Imagine that there are funeral and cemetery fraud scams that are out there too. So if you're bereaved, you're obviously distraught. Someone who's less than legit or is unscrupulous is likely to sell you the top-of-the-line box and something that he or she shouldn't, and you must sign now, because if you don't, there's some problem associated. If you don't sign on the dotted line, your loved one wanted to be cremated, but they must also have that biggest platinum box too. How do you avoid that from happening when, in fact, someone is under duress? They're at the worst possible time in their life. It is a very difficult time, and there are a lot of interesting issues that are raised. There are sort of Bill of Rights for people going through that, where they have certain rights. What I would do is, if I was the person under that stressful situation, and I had someone close to me who I trusted, I'd maybe ask them to come along with me just to have another set of eyes and ears and reason going into those things. I've heard about a whole lot of different things in this area. In the news recently, you've probably seen about people who have been cremated, but their ashes have been mixed in with all other ashes, and are you getting your loved one's ashes back or a combination of others? And you can actually pay extra to make sure it's your loved one's ashes. Should you have to, though, David? Well, I think what you should know is, what is the deal? What am I getting? What am I paying for? And if it's not, I mean, it should be up front. These things are done in groups, and you're not going to get just yours. You can pay extra and get yours. Just know that up front. And do you have to pay for the most expensive, what do you say, box?
Pine box?
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
whatever it is, mahogany?
So interestingly
gold-lined?
enough, I heard recently, I don't know 100% if this is true or not, that you can rent a casket for a wake when the person's going to be cremated and not buy the most expensive one. There's a fairly substantial charge for that rental. I don't know where you go for that. I'm sure it's at the funeral home. I would be a little concerned about, what do they do with that afterwards? Do they sell it as used to somebody else? I don't know what happens with that. But you should know your rights, and you should be very careful to make sure that, even though it's a very difficult time, that you take a step back and think and ask questions. And like I said, maybe bring someone with you who can listen and help ask the questions.
It's apparently, apart from the very basic services that any funeral director would provide, there are many who have what they refer to as additional services, and certainly I could see that some a la carte additional services you might want. But again, if you are under duress and you didn't have the presence of mind perhaps to walk someone through how is this handled, how is that handled, you might find yourself maybe not being entirely victimized by fraud, but certainly at the very least overcharged unnecessarily.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's a legitimate funeral home that it's overcharging, but it might be overselling. And
Exactly.
You may buy things that you don't need because you're not 100% sure of what is necessary. You haven't been through this before. So a lot of times what I actually do with my older population of clients as we're doing planning is to have them set out in advance what they want and to go to a funeral home that they like and trust, and even oftentimes prepay, because when we talked about Medicaid planning in the past, and that's when you need Medicaid to help pay for a nursing home perhaps later in life, one of the things that is exempt from Medicaid's reach is a prepaid funeral contract, because everybody eventually needs to be buried, and they recognize that, and so they let you do that to a reasonable extent. So why not make the plans now while you're not under duress, while you're not under the stress of having just lost somebody, and you're the person who it's going to be for, so you know what you want and what you might need. And if you're going to do that, bring another person with you again.
Of course, that makes perfect sense. And to your point, if you were in the process of doing Medicaid planning and states and all the rest of that, and that was part of that plan, presumably you also would be at least within earshot of it, or have a chance to take a look at some of those papers. And again, it's at a very objective and cool-headed, reasonable time when you can walk someone through the paces rather than having them sign on the dotted line because someone's calling to, to make the next set of plans. You'd be able to pace it, and someone could easily say, let me think about that.
Yeah, in fact, I would recommend, as part of the process of estate planning, and we've talked about this in the past, estate planning is not just writing a will for somebody or doing a trust. There's a lot more that goes into it. And one of the things I would be much more suggestive of is, as you're going through this, don't sign on the dotted line the first time you're there, but bring it back. And if you have someone in your family you trust, talk to them. If they can't go with you, bring it back to your attorney. I'd be more than glad to walk through a prepaid contract, because it is a contract with a funeral home, so that I can explain to my client, well, this is what this is. Do you really want that? Do you need that? And let's talk about how it works, and also how is it being set up? Are they taking the money and putting it into a savings account so that it's there for the funeral home when something happens to you? Versus you're paying them in advance with a contract that it's going to cover all of the expenses at the time that it's necessary. And there are differences that can go into that, such as, can the price go up, or is the price locked in? What are the various aspects of the contract that you need to understand? So, like any other contract, I, as an attorney, would have no problem reviewing that with my clients.
Makes sense. And speaking of the time under which, when someone is under great duress, how about the grandchildren? So most grandchildren hold a special place in the hearts of grandparents. Imagine the phone call that comes, I'm in trouble, I just had an accident, your favorite grandchild just had an accident, it's terrible. Well, however, they beseech this person. And then that senior who's answering the phone says, "John, is that you?" Well, you've already given away the name. "Yes, John, it's me," and now they're off to the races and whatever else is going to follow. Mostly, you need to bail me out, don't tell my parents, it's going to cost $600, come meet me, wire this, or whatever the rest is. So someone's under duress, they want to help their grandchild, they might not be thinking clearly, and how do you suggest that they put the brakes on that? What should a senior or what should someone do?
So a lot of times I think those scams come in the form of an email that I'm in England or I'm somewhere and I've lost my wallet and I'm stuck, I need your help, could you wire me money? And so first of all, know who your family is and where your family's at, and make sure you check and double check before you do anything. So if you have a grandchild whose email has been hacked and now you've got this email that they're stuck in England, well, call your child and say, "Is John," that's the name you used, "still in England? Is he really in England, and what's the story?" And check, double check, maybe triple check before you do anything to make sure it's legit, because 99 out of 100, maybe more times, it's not legit.
And if it's a phone call, it's urgent, I really need you, you must send that you must deliver the $500. That doesn't give that person the time to say, "What's that number, can I go call, I'll be back in touch with you in 5 minutes, or maybe they do have the presence, you'd hope that they have the presence of mind, but let's assume under most circumstances there's a knee-jerk crisis to respond to, and they do. So what do you suggest if that phone call comes in? Don't hang up, don't do anything, you must help me right now. What would you suggest that they do?
And they can't tell that it's a relative by the voice?
Oh, no, it's not. It's your grandchild. Let me pass the phone over to him. I have to deal with the police. I mean, there's so many different things, but it ends up being somebody else who is requesting that money, usually.
Yeah, and you haven't spoken directly to your relative. I would say, give me a number where I can call you back. I need to do some checking. Yes,
and also, if I did need to get that money to you, I would have to make a few phone calls anyway, presumably.
Exactly. Yeah, so I'm going to need to get back to you. I know this is a crisis. Do you have your grandchild's cell phone? Dial the cell phone. You know, find out, talk to them directly.
Or text, or however you can manage to do that. Telemarketing, as we're starting to talk about this relative to someone saying, "Grandpa, can you help me?" Telemarketing has so many different versions of scams. Apart from the do not call, what other things would you suggest that someone does when there's so many different kinds that we could ever enumerate here? You pick up the phone at dinner time, and it could be everything from the charity, your favorite charity, which might be your favorite charity, they might have picked or second guessed, or it might be your credit card's been compromised or whatever. What do you suggest that someone does when they're getting these robocalls or something close to it?
Right. Hang up.
Hang up.
That's what I would suggest.
Just don't go anywhere with it.
So I really encourage philanthropy, and I'd like people to be generous.
Yes.
But be proactive in your generosity. Obviously, you know, a lot of times my wife gets calls, I get calls from our college, you know, from students, and I know those are legit. And that's
How do you know they're legit?
I know they're legit because I've been on the other side of that making those calls at times. But I don't pledge to them, and I never give anything over the phone. If it's my school and I want to give money, and they say, and by the way, they shouldn't take the credit card information or other information over the phone. They should send you a pledge card that says thank you for your donation and mail it to you, and then you can see that it's from the school and send it back. So I encourage people to be proactive in their philanthropy. I reach out to my school and I say, this is what I'm going to give, and I get onto a track of giving to them, to the hospital that I like to give to the other charities that I want to give to. So I reach out to them. I'm very leery of folks reaching out to me that I don't know, never heard of, maybe heard of, but don't think it's legit, and I never give anything over the phone.
Probably a good idea to have this conversation, too, with the parents. Don't give to anyone who is unfamiliar, any company, any charity that's unfamiliar to you, maybe other things to decompress. Please send us information and your reports, or please send us that pledge card, we'll consider it. Better to have someone as you say, proactively be aware that they should not be responding to these in a knee-jerk way.
Right.
Let's get the paperwork on this. How much of this is your commission? How much of this is going to the charity? What's the research? You know nothing, and usually that person who's on the other end of the phone isn't likely to do anything other than request the money.
Never give the credit card information or other information where they can tap into your account over the phone. Always ask for them to send you something in the mail so you can consider it. You know, there's another fraud that I've heard a lot about was the IRS, people posing
Yes.
as the IRS and calling. The IRS is another group that never calls you. They don't call you, they don't ask for information over the phone, they mail you. If you get the letter from the IRS, it's a letter you don't want to see, but it's through the mail, not over the phone.
And apparently, in addition to that, not quite as daunting perhaps as the IRS call or the IRS email or whatever, is the Easy Pass. Many people are starting to use that so that they can save themselves the time and the energy of dropping the quarters in the pay tolls. So now the scam is apparently, whether it's by phone or whether it's by email, you passed a toll road and you didn't pay. We're about to send a warrant for your arrest, but if you pay us now, then we won't send someone to your door to arrest you. Well, you would think that that would immediately just do nothing other than anger you and not do something, but some elderly people get very nervous about those kinds of things and certainly wouldn't want to have the sheriff come and arrest them. What should they do?
They should never pay anything over the phone or give any information over the phone, and I happen to know because way back in the early days of Easy Pass, when you go to Newport, you know now if you stay in the left-hand lane,
Yes.
it's automatic, it goes through.
Yes.
Well, I didn't know about those kinds of tolls, so I was driving from Rhode Island to Pennsylvania, and I went through one, and I'm looking, where do I put the money in? Well, I had gone through one of those. They didn't call me. They didn't threaten me. They sent me a letter and said, hey, you went through the toll in such and such a place. Here's a picture of your car. You owe us the money. Then I sent them the $5 or whatever it was I owed them because I knew I had done it. But never give the information over the phone.
Good to know. Apparently, while we're talking about what they shouldn't do, suppose they have been hacked. We've had this discussion somewhat in previous segments. If you have already divulged that, you walked in the door and you just found out that your mother, your father has given that PIN out, that account number, and they're in trouble, I guess those people who are scammers are also able to pass along or resell it to third parties, never mind the damage that they individually are going to be doing. So does that automatically prompt the next call that you make for your parents to the bank to cancel accounts or change credit cards or whatever?
Change passwords, change PINs, do all of those things quickly, and as soon as you know that something's been hacked, immediately, just like if you lost your wallet. When we talked about the process for that, same thing. Change all the passwords, all the PINs, make sure your accounts are protected. Many
seniors, many adults use the internet. Many are able to find new ways of scamming by having what looks like an absolute picture of your Citizens Bank account or your Capital One. We just need you to click here to verify this or notify us of that. If you click, you're automatically in trouble.
Right.
And how did we decide that we were going to handle that, David?
By not clicking.
Not clicking.
Yeah. We don't respond to any emails we get over the internet. We don't. We initiate contact over the internet. We don't respond to anything over the internet. If you get that, you call your bank directly. If it's a credit card issue, the back of your card has the number. Call them. Tell them you got this email. Ask them if it's legit or not legit.
Good to know. Thank you. Our discussion of legal matters will continue. We hope you will join us. Thank you.